There is a specific form of tragedy that haunts the modern world. It is not the tragedy of the man who fails, but the tragedy of the man who never begins. You know this feeling. It is the subtle, knowing suspicion that your real life has not yet started. You feel as though you are currently living in a rehearsal, provisional existence where your actions don't quite count, and where the consequences of your choices can still be delayed. You are waiting for the perfect job, the perfect woman, the perfect inspiration, or simply for something to happen that will finally pull you out of the audience and onto the stage. But days turn into months, and months turn into years. And while you wait in this hallway of hesitation, filled with infinite potential, life is quietly passing you by. You remain a boy, full of promise, but you never become the king of your own existence. Carl Jung identified this condition. He called it the Puer Aeternus, the eternal child. And according to Jungian psychology, this is not just a personality quirk. It is a dangerous neurosis that, if left untreated, will consume your future and leave you at the end of your days. Looking back at a life that was strictly ... hypothetical, the Puer Aeternus is not merely a man who likes childish things. He is a man who refuses to enter the flow of time. To grow up is to accept limitations. To choose one path is to kill all other possibilities. And for the eternal child, this sacrifice is impossible. He wants everything. He wants to be everything. And because he refuses to limit himself, he ends up becoming nothing. Marie-Louise von Franz, the closest colleague of Carl Jung and the foremost expert on this archetype, described the terrifying nature of this state in her lectures. She warned that this is not a phase that resolves itself naturally. It is a trap. The older you get without committing to reality, the stronger the trap becomes. In this video, we are going to explore the psychology of the Puer Aeternus. We will examine why so many modern men are stuck in a state of extended adolescence, the role of the devouring mother in this pathology, and finally, the painful but necessary cure that Jung proposed, the only way to kill the boy and crown the king. The provisional life. The defining characteristic of the Puer Aeternus is what Jungian psychologist H.G. Baines called the provisional life. It is the strange, unconscious belief that one's present situation is not quite real, and therefore does not require full commitment. The man possessed by this archetype lives with a perpetual exit strategy. He may have a job, but he considers it temporary until his true calling appears. He may be in a relationship, but he keeps one foot out the door, terrified that settling down will close him off from a better, magical option that might appear in the future. He treats reality as a waiting room. Marie-Louise von Franz describes this mindset with surgical precision. The attitude of the Puer Aeternus is that he does not want to enter the stream of time. He always has a reservation. He does not want to commit himself to anything, because commitment means doing something definite, and doing something definite means excluding other possibilities. This refusal to commit creates a unique form of suffering. The pure often feels that he is special, that he is destined for greatness, yet his daily life is often marked by passivity and boredom. He lives in the realm of fantasy, where he is a hero, a genius, or a lover. But in the realm of reality, he is merely potential. The danger of the provisional life is that it is addictive. It feels safe. As long as you don't commit, you can't fail. As long as you don't choose a path, you never have to face the limitations of your own talent or the harshness of the world. You can remain a god in your own mind. But this safety is an illusion. While the pure protects his ego from failure, he is unknowingly sacrificing his soul to avoid. Jung observed that this neurosis often manifests as a fear of being pinned down. The pure fears routine, discipline, and obligation like the plague. He sees them as chains that will imprison his spirit. But what he fails to realize is that without these chains of earthly responsibility, his spirit has no vessel to contain it. It simply evaporates. The tragedy of the provisional life is that it eventually runs out of time. The temporary job becomes a 20-year career of resentment. The temporary loneliness becomes a life of isolation. The man wakes up one day to find that the life he was waiting for has passed him by while he was busy keeping his options open. He realizes too late that the only way to truly live is to let the infinite possibilities die, and to embrace the one imperfect, concrete reality that is right in front of him. The high-flying Icarus, the archetypal image that best captures the fate of the Puer Aeternus, is the Greek myth of Icarus. We all know the story. Icarus is given wings made of wax and feathers. He is warned not to fly too close to the sun, nor too close to the sea. But intoxicated by the thrill of flight, he soars higher and higher, until the heat of the sun melts his wings, and he plunges into the sea to his death. Psychologically, this flying represents the Puer's detachment from reality. The eternal child is often fascinated by things that lift him above the earth: spirituality, philosophy, grand political ideals, or intense romantic fantasies. He prefers the realm of the mind, where everything is pure and perfect, to the realm of the earth, where things are messy, slow, and difficult. Marie-Louise von Franz noted that men possessed by this archetype often have a peculiar charm. They are often highly intuitive, creative, and idealistic. They look down on ordinary people who work mundane jobs and live conventional lives, viewing them as asleep or spiritually dead. The Puer believes he is meant for something higher. However, this ascent comes at a terrible price. Because he has no footing on solid ground, no career stability, no long-term roots, no disciplined routine, his high-flying spirit is unstable. Jungian psychology teaches that every psychological extreme secretly contains its own opposite. This is the principle of enantiodromia. The higher the Puer flies in his fantasy of specialness, the deeper he eventually crashes into depression. This is why the life of the eternal child is often a cycle of manic enthusiasm followed by crushing despair. One moment, he is starting a revolutionary project or falling madly in love. The next, when the first obstacle arises, he collapses. The wings melt, the wax dissolves, and he falls into the dark sea of the unconscious. This fall is not just a bad mood. It is a confrontation with his own unlived life. The depression is actually the earth trying to claim him. But instead of planting his feet on the ground and building a foundation, the Puer usually interprets this pain as a sign that he needs to fly again to find a new distraction, a new fantasy, or a new escape, perpetuating the cycle that is slowly destroying him. The mother complex and the golden cage. If the Puer's symptom is flying, the root cause is often found in the soil he refuses to touch. Jung was explicit about the origin of this neurosis. It is almost always rooted in a mother complex. In a healthy development, the mother serves as the first source of nourishment and safety. But as the boy grows, he must gradually separate from her to establish his independence. He must leave the womb of comfort to face the harshness of the world. The Puer Aeternus, however, never truly leaves. This does not necessarily mean he lives in his mother's basement. He might live thousands of miles away, but psychologically, he remains tethered to the maternal unconscious. He seeks the comfort, the validation, and the unconditional love of a mother in everything he does. He expects the world to be as forgiving as a womb. Sometimes this is caused by a devouring mother, a mother who, out of her own anxiety or need for control, binds the son to her, making him feel guilty for growing up or leaving. She builds a golden cage around him. Inside the cage, he is safe, fed, and praised. You are my special prince, but he is not free. He is a pet, not a man. Von Franz explains that this creates a man who is terrified of the cold winds of reality. He perceives any demand for discipline or struggle as a personal attack. He feels that the world owes him a living simply because he exists. This dependency often transfers to his romantic relationships. The pure looks for a mother goddess in every woman, someone who will nurture him, understand him without words, and tolerate his lack of direction. Or conversely, he becomes a Don Juan, jumping from woman to woman, terrified that if he stays with one for too long, she will transform into the devouring mother and consume his soul. This is the dark secret of the eternal child. His freedom is a lie. He refuses to commit to a job or a family because he thinks he is preserving his independence. But in reality, he is merely obeying the unconscious command of the mother complex. Do not grow up, stay small. Stay safe, stay mine. The refusal to sacrifice, to break free from the mother complex and escape the tragedy of the eternal child. A sacrifice is required. But this is exactly what the Puer Aeternus cannot tolerate. In ancient myths and tribal rites of passage, the boy had to die so that the man could be born. This death was often symbolic, involving pain, isolation, and the confrontation of fear. It was a ritual sacrifice of childhood. The modern world has largely lost these rituals, leaving the pure stranded in a state of suspended animation. He wants the rewards of adulthood: respect, power, love without paying the price of his childhood freedom. He wants to be a master artist, but he refuses the sacrifice of boring, repetitive practice. He wants a deep relationship, but he refuses the sacrifice of his other options. He wants to be wealthy, but he refuses the sacrifice of his leisure time. Jung observed that this refusal to sacrifice creates a specific form of neurosis, angst, or dread. The pure senses time running out. He sees his peers building lives, families, and legacies, while he remains in the same place, clutching his potential like a lottery ticket he never cashes. This dread is the unconscious mind screaming that life is finite. Marie-Louise von Franz puts it bluntly: the cure is to work. But the pure always has a reason why he can't work right now. The sacrifice required is not just hard work. It is the sacrifice of the ideal. The pure must give up the fantasy of the perfect life to embrace the reality of an imperfect one. He must accept that he is not a god, but a mortal man with limits. This acceptance is painful. It feels like a death. And in a way, it is. It is the death of the boy who thought he could fly. But it is also the birth of the man who can walk. Work is the only cure. So, how does one kill the eternal child and become the king? Jung's answer is deceptively simple, yet incredibly difficult to practice. Work. But Jung is not talking about creative work or passion projects that come easily when inspiration strikes. That is just another form of flying. He is talking about mundane, heavy, earthbound work. The kind of work that is boring. The kind of work that requires patience, endurance, and grit. Von Franz advises the Puer Aeternus to take on a task and stick to it, especially when the enthusiasm fades. Whether it is a job, a degree, or a responsibility to another person, the cure lies in the ability to endure the grayness of daily life without escaping into fantasy. You must just put your nose to the grindstone, she says. You must do the next necessary thing, however small or insignificant it may seem. Why is this the cure? Because routine and discipline act as an anchor. They pull the balloon of the pure's ego down from the clouds and tether it to the earth. Through the friction of work, the man builds psychological gravity. He stops being a cloud that changes shape with every wind and becomes a stone that can support a structure. When the pure commits to a path and refuses to quit when it gets hard, he finally separates from the mother. He proves to his unconscious that he can survive on his own without the constant nourishment of validation. He learns that satisfaction does not come from being special, but from being competent. This is the transition from the prince to the king. The prince is born with status. The king must build his kingdom. brick by boring brick. The shadow of the Don Juan, one of the most visible manifestations of the Puer Aeternus neurosis, appears in the realm of romantic love. Jung observed that the man who remains a child psychologically often splits women into two distinct categories, neither of which relates to a real human being. On one side, there is the maternal figure, the woman who offers unconditional love, shelter, and forgiveness. The Puer is drawn to her because she allows him to remain weak. She cleans up his messes, tolerates his indecision, and asks for nothing in return. But unconsciously, he despises her for it. He feels suffocated by her care, interpreting it as the bars of his golden cage. He eventually rebels, often through infidelity or emotional withdrawal, trying to prove a freedom he does not possess. On the other side, there is the anima figure, the muse, the unattainable goddess, the femme fatale. The Puer becomes obsessed with this type of woman precisely because he cannot possess her. She represents the flying aspect of his psyche. He projects his own soul onto her, believing that if he can just win her love, his life will finally have meaning. He falls in love not with the woman, but with the fantasy he has draped over her. This leads to the phenomenon of Don Juanism. The eternal child moves from woman to woman, seeking the perfect high of new love. In the beginning, every relationship feels like salvation. But the moment the woman shows a flaw, or the moment the relationship demands real work, compromise, or sacrifice, the Puer checks out. The fantasy is broken. The goddess has become human. And since he cannot tolerate reality, he leaves to find a new screen on which to project his movie. Marie-Louise von Franz warns that this is a form of psychological vampirism. The Puer uses women to fuel his ego, terrified of true intimacy. Why? Because true intimacy requires revealing one's weakness. It requires staying when things get boring. It requires the death of the infinite options. To love one woman is to sacrifice all other women. And the Puer, clutching his imaginary potential, refuses to pay that price. The result is a trail of broken hearts and a deepening sense of loneliness that no amount of seduction can cure. He ends up alone, not because he is unlovable, but because he is unwilling to be known. The midnight of the soul, eventually, the biological clock outruns the psychological clock. This brings us to the darkest but most necessary phase of the Puer's journey, the confrontation with time. For the young man, time seems infinite. The provisional life feels acceptable at 25 because there is still time to become the king. But as the Puer enters his 30s, 40s, and 50s, the provisional life stops feeling like a rehearsal and starts feeling like a tragedy. Jung called this the noon of life, but for the Puer who has refused to grow up, it feels more like a midnight. He looks in the mirror and sees gray hair, but behind the eyes, he feels like a confused 17-year-old. He looks at his peers and sees careers built, families raised, and hardships overcome. He looks at his own life and sees a collection of started projects, half-finished manuscripts, and vague plans that never materialized. This realization often triggers a massive neurosis or a midlife crisis. The Puer may panic and try to recapture his youth through sports cars, younger partners, or sudden, drastic changes. He tries to fly one last time. But these attempts are pathetic, not heroic. They are the frantic threshing of a drowning man. However, Jung argues that this crisis is actually the psyche's attempt to save itself. The pain of regret is necessary. It is the only thing strong enough to shatter the glass of the golden cage. In this dark night of the soul, the Puer is forced to admit the truth. I am not special. I am not infinite. I am mortal, and I am running out of time. This admission is the death of the ego's grandiose fantasy. It is a moment of utter humiliation. But in alchemy and Jungian psychology, the nigredo, the blackening, the decomposition is the first step of the opus. You cannot build a real life until the fantasy life has rotted away. It is only when the man accepts his insignificance that he can begin to build something significant. He stops trying to be a genius and starts trying to be useful. He stops waiting for the perfect time and starts working in the real time. The midnight of the soul is painful, yes. It burns away the wax wings of Icarus, but it leaves behind the man. And the man, stripped of his illusions, is finally ready to walk the earth. Becoming the king, the journey from the Puer Aeternus to the king, is not a journey of gaining something new, but of losing something false. It is the process of shedding the illusion of infinite potential to embrace the dignity of actual achievement. Jung's warning is clear. Life is not a dress rehearsal. There is no audience waiting to applaud when you finally decide to start living. The curtain is already up. The play is happening right now. And every moment you spend in the wings, waiting for a better script, is a moment that is lost forever. The cure for the eternal child is not found in books, in videos, or in thinking. It is found in the ground. It is found in the weight of responsibility. It is found in the promise kept, the job finished, the relationship sustained through the boring days. You must choose. You can remain the boy charming, full of dreams, but ultimately weightless, blown away by the first storm of reality. Or you can kill the boy, bury his fantasies, and bear the heavy, glorious crown of your own life. The king does not fly. The king stands. He builds. He protects. And he endures. The time for flying is over. It is time to land. If you are ready to leave the provisional life behind and begin the real work of individuation, subscribe to the channel. In the comments below, write, "I am ready to land." Let this be your first act of commitment to reality. Thank you for watching.